Well, hang on.
Radio.
I'll put you in. Hang on. We'll silence both me and you. Hang on.
But we are making a stand, and we're waking everybody up that 9/11 was an inside job. And you are the minority. You are the cowards who don't know the truth. You're the people that serve this evil system. You're the people that serve a system that hurts innocent men, women, and children, not just Iraqis, not just Afghans, not just Africans, but the people right here in this nation. You serve a new world order that attacks and feeds on you. And I'm here to tell you that you will be defeated. Your hours are numbered. We've got the energy. We've got the life force. All you've got is evil backing you up. All you've got is greed and liking to look at yourself in the mirror. Because deep down, the New World Order is a pot-bellied, chicken-necked ninny. And all the armor and all the weapons are nothing. You are nothing compared to good. You are nothing compared to life. And you will be defeated. I want the individuals out there, I want free humanity to turn themselves loose, to cut the chains loose, and to use the end of that chain to slap the New World Order right upside the head. You've got the power. You want to know who can defeat the New World Order? It is you. You're the individuals that are going to be able to defeat this system. You're the individuals that are going to be able to take down the New World Order. It doesn't matter if Ron Paul wins. It doesn't matter if they rig the election. What matters is that we're starting to stand up. We're starting to move. We're starting to find our legs. We're starting to build our muscle. We're starting to realize that we do have power, and we can work together, and we can take action, and that the naysayers are a pack of weak liars who have never had any successes in their life and who are upset and frustrated to see us beginning to have victories against tyranny. They don't have any respect for themselves. They don't have any vision, and they don't have any will. And they sure don't have any of the power that shines out of God's soul and energizes all life in the universe. They have wed themselves to death, and they will crumble, and they will fall, and for eternity we wed ourselves to life, and to everything good, and everything that flows from it. And they will crumble, and they will fall.
All right, that little background here. Hang on, I should reconnect the server here. Okay. All right, now, Dan, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Okay, I got you on right now, but can you see the board or anything? Are you logged in or no?
I think I'm looking at the board. I don't know what the board normally looks like.
All right. Well, anyway, we got some callers here. We got, let's see here. We got 720, your number. We got a little background noise between you and me, so I'm going to have to let you take over until I figure that out. So you go ahead and talk about what you said you had a hectic day, so go ahead.
Oh, all right. Well, I think I was the background noise because I had your website up at the same time. I was on the phone here with you, but it's the insanity going on today. And, the amazing thing, like this state today was unreal for me because I'm in a part of America where the white people are about 8% of the population. So my experience today was I had to get some roofing contractors out for an emergency repair on a roof, and it was like pulling teeth to get any kind of commitment on when anybody would show up. And there's predicted a thunderstorm on its way, so it was getting down to, brass tacks real quick. And then a crew of about 6 guys finally shows up, and not one of them could speak English. No English whatsoever. So fortunately, the way Yahweh works things sometimes, about 2 days ago, I got this inkling to order one of those little pocket translators. And I know they've improved them quite a bit, and the price has come way down. So I found this real reasonably priced one on Amazon, and I had just learned how to use it just enough that when I went over there, I had it in my pocket. And when I found out nobody could speak English, I set it up for English and Spanish and was able to communicate with them. Plus, I know a little bit of Spanish. So we were able to communicate enough to get the emergency part of the job done, and then the regular roof repair will go on in a couple days. But this is the kind of stuff that it's not just happening to me, because I'm on the phone with people every day, all over America, even all over the world, actually, but here in America especially, and finding competent contractors and professionals is difficult. I mean, it's unbelievable how difficult it is. There's a lackadaisical attitude about whether you show up on time, how you show up, whether you get the job done right, whether you clean up after it. I mean, this has been going on for a while, but now it's at a stage that even the normies are starting to get frustrated with it all. So we not only have the medical problem as far as getting competent help in that area, and my own daughter is a senior supervising nurse. She's been one for decades now, and she's a supervisor over 3 different campuses of a major hospital. So she was telling me that in the past 4.5 years, since this whole COVID nonsense thing started, that virtually every nurse that comes to work in their hospitals, she recommends that they go back for remedial training because they don't know what they're doing. I said, every single one. And she said, in my experience, she goes, Dad, she said, every one of them. Now, interestingly enough, back in the late 1990s, my grandmother had passed away in central Pennsylvania, and a lady bought the house, and it turned out she was a professor at Penn State University. So because I grew up just south of Penn State. State College is where the campus is, State College, Pennsylvania, Penn State University. So I got talking to her one day. I said, you're a professor at State? I said, wow, that's pretty cool. And she goes, yeah, it's frustrating sometimes. I said, well, what do you teach? She said, criminal law. I said, wow, really? And she said, yeah, but you know, I have to send 50%. Now, this was in the 1990s. She said, I have to submit that 50% of my students must go through remedial training because they don't know how to take notes. They don't know enough to sit through my lectures successfully. 50% in the late 1990s. So you can imagine what it's like today if it was like that in the 1990s.
Yeah,
so
they didn't have cell phones back then.
What's that?
You know, they didn't have cell phones back then either. So, you know, like they didn't, you know, we weren't carrying around cell phones all the time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
I mean, you know, things have gotten much worse because of the electronics. It's made them much lazier. People depend on GPS. They don't even know how to read a road map anymore. They depend on their pocket brain, that little portable brain. They don't know how to think. They don't know how to research anything, look it up, read a book. Now that AI is out, it's going to get even worse because now AI will write book reports for you and everything.
Yeah, it's bad. I like that what you said about reading maps. I've sent guys out to go on jobs and everything, and they don't know where they're going. They've lived here for 35 years of their life, and they don't know the way around their own city. You know, and I'm like, I'm from up north, you know, and I'm like, how could you not know? I said, well, read a map. I said, bring a map with you, you know, because this is even a little bit before GPS was a big thing, you know. So they, you know, and they couldn't figure it out. No, they didn't know how to read a map. You know, how could you not know how to read a map to figure out where you're going? You know, that should be a requirement when you drive. You know, terrible. And
the odd thing of it is that reading a map sometimes is more pleasurable than farting around with a damn GPS, because a map you just simply open it up and you know, to me it's much easier to figure out where you want to go and what the rest of the state looks like, and this looks like an interesting road over here. Well, on GPS, all you know to do is put in where you're at and where you're going, and you're going to assume that the GPS will take you on the best route. Well, I know in South Florida that doesn't work, because back when I was still working and GPS had just come out, well, I'd been out for a couple of years anyway, I bought a Garmin unit, and I had to get to an airplane one day, and I was running late. So I'm up here on the turnpike in South Florida, and I punch into the GPS to take me to the Fort Lauderdale airport. Next thing I know, I'm staring at the entrance to the Miami International Airport. So GPS on the screen showed me that I was going to Fort Lauderdale, which is a smaller, much more comfortable airport to deal with. And yet I wasn't paying attention. I'm just listening to the GPS lead me, and it led me off the beaten track to the Miami International Airport. So here I am running late, and I'm off in the middle of Miami trying to find my way back on the expressway so I can get to Fort Lauderdale, which is another 20 miles up the road, and make my flight. So that was a frustrating day. Fortunately, I made it, but it taught me an important lesson.
Yeah, valuable lesson. Yeah. Yep. And you know something? I want to bring this up real quick. You know something? And Desert Storm, that's the reason why we slaughtered the Iraqis in the desert. Because we had GPS and they didn't. They didn't even know what it was. And we were using GPS, the military was. And that was a big thing. They couldn't figure it out, why we were getting, going places where they are supposed to be and they're not, and where we are, and we're just hitting them, hitting their tanks left and right, and they couldn't figure it out, I mean, it's just insane.
Right.
But, people are just, they're not too bright. We got a couple callers here on the line right here. I don't know if you can see them or not. Usually I'm trying to get Dan here so where he can control the board and see the board. And so I'm going to unmute 225 first, and then I got 305. So let me go ahead and unmute them. And that's how you unmute them, if you can see the board, Dan. But go ahead there. I think this is Gunslinger from Texas.
No, this is Mike.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
This is Mike. Yeah, Gunslinger, I believe, is 8-something or 6-something. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, yeah, I mean, in terms of the maps, I mean, look, a lot of people, the younger generation doesn't know. They don't know. I mean, back when I was in the Scouts, they taught us how to read maps. They taught, and that's been in the 1980s. Yeah, that's been in the 1980s. Yeah, and that was a big part of when we went on retreat. They would teach us things, putting up a tent, reading a map, all that type of stuff they would teach us. And I don't know if the Scouts do that nowadays, but again, Scouts have been corrupted. The Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts have been corrupted so much with different things, but that's what they used to do. And a lot of these younger people don't know. They depend on the GPS.
Mike, and Mike, plus they don't care. And they don't care to know or learn. They have no, and that's the point me and Dan were trying to bring, I think, is that the younger generation has no work ethic. They have no drive, no gumption. So that brings us to the Patriot community. How, with this breed of stock we have coming out today, we're really, look at our generation. Now look at tomorrow's generation. How can we expect to receive or see solutions or come up with solutions for progress to restore our republic? We can't. I'm not going to give up, but I'm just saying we're in big freaking trouble.
Right, we are, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
We are in big trouble, and it, you may have a couple hundred people or whatever on any given call, or maybe less than that on any given call on any of these shows, and it's the same people over and over and over again, and and at some point you become to the point of where you're preaching to the choir. Preaching to the choir.
Yep. Good point. Good point. That's a good point. That's a good point you just brought up right there. New faces are a dying breed. It's the same people that we have, which I don't mind talking to patriots across the country, keeping in touch with them, seeing what's affecting them or what any type of news that, because they tell me or report to me what's going on that, of course, we're not going to get from the news media or what's going on, the truth. Of course not.
And here's
so
you talked about.
I'll connect you back to Mike in a second. Go ahead, Mike.
I just want to go back to the whole map situation. Back in the day,
right,
when the encyclopedia salesman came by and would sell you an encyclopedia, one of the things they would sell you, along with the set of encyclopedias, was an atlas. Because I remember having an old fucking Wagnalls road atlas,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When I was a kid, I had a globe in my bedroom. Today, they don't even sell them in stores anymore, So, which we can get into that where the earth is flat and everything, but still, I still had a globe in my bedroom, guys, So don't cut me off out like that. Let me connect to Mike here. Mike's been waiting a long time, so let me connect him, and then I see a private call with your hand up. Go ahead there, Mikey. I think that's Mike.
Yeah, hey brother, how you doing?
All right, I've got Dan on here with me too. I'm trying to get him to host the program, but I think we're having trouble here because I don't see what he sees and whatnot. But we'll get it. But anyway, what's the word?
Yeah, not a lot right now. Just kind of laying low. I was talking to Dan last night. We're just, there's a lot of buzz going on about things, but we're just kind of waiting to see if any spectacular things are going to take place this year, like so many people are predicting.
Glad you brought that up.
What's that?
I said I'm glad you brought that up because I want to comment on that after you're done. But go ahead. I didn't hear you, Mike. You broke up.
Yeah, I can comment on it. And again, I'm in a bad damn zone, so I apologize again. But
that's all right. That's all right.
Comment on it.
Yeah, well, Mike, what it is I spoke to a couple people also, and also I wanted to bring something to your attention. I sent you an email, David Straight. I'm not. I take your word. I take your word credible. I consider you credible, and what you say I usually go with. But I got pounded by people. I guess they heard us talking about him on the podcast show last week. Pounded with videos and emails about David Straight and his lack of credibility and how he's taken people's money or he's done this stuff in courts that hasn't worked for him, but he's telling other people to do it. He doesn't have his kids. His kids were taken from him. Stuff like along those lines.
Yeah. No, thank you for bringing that up. Man, if only what I'm going to say right now could be broadcast worldwide, especially for all those disgruntled, David Straight, whatever we would call them. Let me try to describe them since we don't really have a name. What's going on is two things. Well, three. Let me throw these three factors out, and people can mix these factors together in their head and make it work. Number one, as you know, I know David Straight personally. I've been to his seminars. He calls me on his own sometimes, and he'll say, "Where you been? Don't you love me anymore? How come you?" Relationship. My son, also, as you know, 33 years of age.
You're breaking up again, Mike.
Hello?
Yeah, can't hear you. I heard you good, then all of a sudden you just started breaking up real bad.
Yeah. Let me know if I break up. Can you hear me now?
Okay, go ahead. I can hear you now. Go ahead.
And do cut in and let me know if it breaks up so that I know. I might have to walk outside. In fact, let me do that because this is an important topic.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me walk out to my front door.
We have a few other hands up here waiting, so yeah.
I guess as I'm walking out.
All right. I think I've still got Dan too. I can't see my board now for some reason. I can't get into the chat room either. So, but anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm walking out my front door. I'm out my front door. I'm sitting on the front porch. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I usually get a good signal. I'm even going to take it off. Can you hear me now? I'm off speaker outside.
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the issue with David Straight, again, 3 factors that people can just kind of put this all together in their own minds. I know him personally, as you know. He'll call me. I'll call him. He's called my son. I absolutely know for a fact that he is full of genuine, true, accurate knowledge regarding our nation's history, the difference between the de facto and the de jure, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, the Northwest Ordinance, pretty much anything, you name it. He knows about it. He can cite stuff. He knows the U.S. codes, which he always tells people are your best friends. So the man, I label him the godfather of knowledge when it comes to the reality of where we're at in terms of living in a world that is run by communists, godless communists with a New World Order, one world government agenda. He is despised by them and hated by them. So the first factor is that I know personally he's a genuine man, he's an honest man, he's a man of God legitimately, and he's a good man, and he's extremely knowledgeable. So the second
Did he have a meeting with Donald Trump? Did he have a meeting with Donald Trump? Because that's a big thing. Was he in the Rose Garden with Donald Trump?
Let me come back to that. Let's say that the first part I said is part 1A, and we're going to come back to 1B. But let me hit the 1, 2, 3s, and then we'll come back to 1B. So 1A is everything I said. The man is honest and he's a true man of God, and he knows what he's talking about. Okay. So part 2 is that the system out there, the corrupt powers that be, the theys out there, those that are trying to maintain and keep their, corrupt communist corporate government systems going and growing, and turning people into sheeple, they know who he is very well, and they absolutely have him in their crosshairs, and he is blacklisted. They do everything they can of their own accord to discredit him. They literally have propaganda, fabricated propaganda, articles and papers and videos. And anytime anybody has an issue with them where they got themselves in trouble and they feel they can turn it around and put it on David, they're going to not only do that on their own, but they're going to endeavor to get in touch with those people or encourage those people. They will have operatives literally to try to corral all such people, which takes me to number 3. The number 3 is that there are many people out there that, like all of us, the vast majority of people that discover initially this whole reality of the corporate fraud, the corporation, the de facto versus the de jure, and all this stuff, not only have all of us, been guilty of having never read, or most people, this doesn't apply to everybody, some of this applies to me, some of this doesn't, but people, by and large, have never read the Constitution. They've never read the Bill of Rights. They've never read the Declaration of Independence. They've never read the Federalist Papers. They've never read the Northwest Ordinance. They've never read the Bible. They don't know anything about any of that. They just know what they've been taught going to school, and it's all they care about is their frivolous life in this screwed up world with all the frivolous entertainment and tattoos and pink hair and hairdos and he, she, it, they, pronouns and.
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier about this. Hang on, Mike. Let me interrupt you. And that's what we were getting to earlier. Is we were talking about the people like Dan was talking about the lack of knowledge today that people have, the lack of gumption, the lack of work ethic, the lack of of ethics. So that feeds into a little bit what you're saying. But please, go ahead.
Right. So what happens is that those people, they hear David Straight and they're fascinated. That's why they get involved with him. And most of them, if not all of them, will admit, oh, yeah, I was into David Straight. I was all into David Straight. So they'll say that at the outset to even try to credit they'll try to use that to credit their discredit. You know what I mean? No, I believed in him. I was all into him. So they'll all acknowledge that it's because, of course, they were intrigued. They were fascinated. So what happened is, in their own naivety, in their own lack of knowledge, many of them get themselves into trouble, thinking that because they're listening to David Straight, that all of a sudden, because they watched a video, that now they have all the knowledge in the world. This man spent 40 years of his life acquiring, but they think because they watched an hour video or 8 hours of video or even 2 weeks of videos, because they think they watched some of his videos and it was inspiring and motivating and intriguing and captivated them, and wow, this is incredible, that all of a sudden they can go around and flick birds to cops and say, I'm invincible, I'm a sovereign, you can't touch me, and spit in the judge's face, and go out and drunk drive and get a DUI and walk into court and say, I'm a sovereign, Your Honor, you can't touch me, or have their children taken away from them by DCS, or Department of Children and Families, DCF, perhaps oftentimes justifiably because of abuse or drunkenness or drug use in the home, abusing their children. They'll have their children taken away, so they'll try to take that approach of, David says they're just a big con operation and they're trying to steal children and they took my children away. So now they're trying to use that card, and then they end up in more trouble when they go to the courts. Like they think it's some magic card that they can just pull out to all of a sudden be immune from law and immune from justice. So that's the third factor. Most, if not all, and I would say all the people that you're going to see on the internet that do videos where they're trying to create little followings of opposition to David Straight are not only fall into the category I just described, but then on top of that, they're trying to use that now to build their own little community, their own little social clique, their own little online social media following.
Hang on, Mike. All right, so we got a lot of people here on the line, so we just did he have a meeting? A lot of people were asking me through my chat. Did he have a meeting with Donald Trump in the Rose Garden?
Right. So that takes me back to 1B. So David Straight. Let me just give a little bit of a preface to this, because it's important, because it doesn't just apply to David Straight, but applies to everybody. There was a movement going on over the last several years. It really started in the Obama administration, called QAnon, the Q movement, right? Now I could talk about that for 5 minutes. How even that you'll get. It's like the old saying: the devil can throw out a lie and then sit back because a bunch of idiots will run with it. So the Q psyop even spawned all kinds of wannabe Dick Tracy's online and starting their own channels and trying to get followings. So it creates a complete clusterfuck of online social media bullshit. So the Q psyop itself, QAnon, QQ, the real, so to speak, Q white hats, is clearly and obviously a communist white hat so-called psyop. I've pointed that out on numerous occasions, and again, it's documented to the T at righteousarmy.org on the Q and Trump page. There's a whole page dedicated to that, and it makes the point very clear that they're using the same playbook they used pre-World War I with Operation Trust. The whole point is that the enemy of those who are endeavoring to create a new world order, one world government corporate agenda, their enemy is patriotic or WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Christians, to put it bluntly. That their enemy are white American men and women that claim the Second Amendment, the Bible, traditional family values, hoorah, hoorah, don't tread on me. I'm an American fucking patriot. Don't fuck with me. Those are the enemy. They are standing in the way of a new world order, one world government agenda, because those are the people that have the balls to stand up against it, where the rest of the world, they're just going to get snowed over. And that doesn't mean all white people, because look at all the white people who have been turned stupid and dumb and have succumbed to the LGBTQ A to Z pronouns.
And Dan, you can
bullshit.
Jump in anytime. I want Dan to, not think he's left out here, because he's I kind of got him as the really wanting him to host the show. So go ahead.
Distinctly to the question about David Straight, I just wanted to kind of preface this whole Q movement bullshit. Many people, brilliant people, smart people, intelligent people, even in military, could be and have been deceived by it. They've been sucked in and allured by that operation. It's a kind of an operation where anybody in their right mind would hope it's true, believe it's true, and want to hope it's true, just as I or anybody else would. How great would that be if there's some great righteous people on the inside that are going to clean up the communists? But that's a psychological operation to keep patriots at bay and inactive so they don't do anything and they believe somebody's going to do something for them, is basically what it amounts to. So I do believe that David Strait himself was a victim of that, and I've told him that. I said, David, you've really... I'm telling you, it's a psyop, and I don't know, a lot of this stuff you're clinging to. And I got him to admit that to me on the phone. He kind of admitted that he did have concerns about Trump pushing the vaccines and this, that, and the other. So at the same time, there are things that David Strait has said, and I've told him this. I said, David, there's things you say that not only do people misconstrue, because he has never said he was a Navy SEAL, but people will say that he said he was a Navy SEAL. He was associated and affiliated with people in the military who were Navy SEALs. Same thing with Rick Martin. He never said he was a Green Beret, but he worked with Green Berets, and people start trying to discredit him. So, again, there's a lot of discredit operations going on, and that just turns it into a clusterfuck. I'm just here to tell you I know the man personally. He's legit. And even if, this is the last thing I'll say, because I told him this, and I've told this to people even while I was at his seminar, while we were listening to him up there saying amazing things. Even if that man is up there right now bullshitting people about going through dungeons, rescuing children, and working with SEALs and being a personal friend of Reagan and getting a hat from Bush and Rose Garden, even if he made that shit up just to get people to listen to him, hallelujah, more power to him, because everything that he has to say regarding the state of this nation, the difference between the de jure and the republic and the fraud and the U.S. codes and what our rights are, and God, who he promotes first and foremost, just like Dan does. It's Yahweh first. It's God's laws first. Even if he was blowing things out of proportion to try to lure people or attract people into his seminars, more power to him. And as far as him making money at seminars, the man is going around the country spending his money to rent hotels and ballrooms. And when I went to his seminar, they had an abundance of red grapes and green grapes and apples and a variety of herbal teas and raw honey, high-quality stuff for all the people that were there.
No, I got you, Mike. I got you. I just got people waiting, that's all. And me and Dan are kind of, we talked about this, not to cut you off, hang on, but you can talk again. We just kind of want to keep everyone within 2 to 3 minutes, you know what I mean? Because keep the ball rolling. You know what I mean? Right? But you can come back and talk, I'm just saying. But go ahead.
Right. I hear you. That's just an important issue. I had to get all that out, but go ahead.
All right. No, Dan, but back to you, man. Go ahead. I mean, I don't want to cut Mike off, but I'm just saying we kind of like got to, because other people are starting to they're sending me messages saying, hey, I'm waiting too, so. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you got to give everybody a shot. I mean, that's what a meeting's all about. And even the Bible says, a prudent man says much with few words. So that's just the way of saying brevity, okay, instead of being a pontificator. But anyway, I think, like Mike's saying, a lot of these people don't seem to figure out that this is not a political solution. There is no political solution this go around. It's over. The republic's gone. Constitution is just a goddamn piece of paper. George Bush said that. Okay, so that tells you the mental attitude of these people. Okay, so if they don't even have any respect for what we call the supreme law of the land, it might as well have been burnt up and disappeared. It does not exist. All right, so there is no political solution. These people, it reminds me of the movie Gladiator. If you remember that movie, there's a scene in there where the sister to the emperor, even though he murdered his own father to become emperor, he wants to establish himself as a deity. And he looks at his sister and says, do you think it's time for me to dissolve the Senate and declare myself basically Caesar or God? She goes, no. Leave the people their illusion, okay? That's what's happening in America. Congress, the Supreme Court, the executive branch, that's the illusion that there's still a republic. It's gone. That's just a facade. The people behind the scenes, what we call the deep state, the unelected assholes with trillions of dollars at their disposal, they're running the show. And you're not going to unseat them from power with voting. That's over. Or electing some guy that's pretending to be our white knight. That's over. There is no white knight coming. There is no solution within the beast system. And that's what Americans have to grow up, put on their big boy pants and their big girl panties, and understand that you just have to come to grips with that. You're not going to fix the system within the system. The system's corrupt. And we have to think outside the box. And we, the people, are where the solution is, just like it was back in the mid-1700s when the colonists had to realize that King George and his troops are not going to voluntarily leave. They got too much money invested. They don't want to give up their power. And so this is going to turn into a fight. And it's basically the same thing now. I yield.
Let me unmute private caller. Private caller, go ahead. Then I got 414. Private caller.
Hello?
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, hey, Joe, it's me. How you doing, man? Look, you were talking earlier about... Oh, okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. You were talking earlier about map reading, and it brought to mind that the hardest individual skill I had to pick up in the Army was how to read a military with all the contour intervals on it and the declination diagrams and the range distance scales and all this other stuff, you know, grid north, true north, magnetic north, and how to do all those things. It was really hard for me to pick it up. But once I did, I realized what an exercise it was in the ability to be able to abstractly think. And it got me to thinking that now I've become so dependent on GPS, I stopped using GPS and I've gone back to using maps because, you know what? If you keep having answers given to you for everything you have to do in life, you'll lose the wrinkles in your cerebrum. Your brain will get smooth. And that's what these people are being handed today. They're being handed the answers to everything instantly without having to do any work for it or any ability to compute. And I think that is really dangerous. That's all. This stuff is subject to malfunction and failure by a bad lightning storm or an electromagnetic pulse or sabotage or any number of things. Then what is the country? We're gonna be just wandering around looking for our useless cell phones that don't work anymore.
Yeah, we're dependent, Sarge, on the electronics and the cell phone more than ever. But the system's making us do that. You know, if I change my cell phone number, I get locked out of my bank account, get locked out of Amazon, get locked out of eBay. You know, and they got that two-factor authentication crap now. So if you lose your cell phone, you're screwed. Your life shuts down. You know, and I can't stand it. You know, I mean, it's terrible. They got AI doing bank fraud investigations now. I mean, if you lose your debit card or something, AI does the investigation. It's crazy. I mean, how do we reverse this? Yeah.
Hey, Joe, how did they sell this to us in the first place? They sold us all this stuff by telling us it would make us independent. It would make us less dependent on others. Well, I think to a great extent, it's had the opposite effect. It has made us infinitely more dependent and infinitely more dependent on centralized control and power. And I think we'd really better start confronting what this means for us in the future. In fact, right now.
Yeah, I agree. Sarge, I want to come back to you in a second here about the codes and statutes thing. You and I had a big debate about that, but I want to connect 414 real quick. 414, go ahead. What's on your mind?
Yeah, this is Josh from Wisconsin. I was listening you go on about Davis Strait, and you know, the guy sells something that he doesn't deliver on, you know, and he's always selling something. And I asked him to, you know, I started getting the Anavan Reich and all that now, and he's telling me all through that. Well, what do you have? Well, Strait University. I go on there, and all there are books to buy. That's it. There's no paperwork. You got to correct your status. You got to do all this stuff. but there's nothing there. It's just a bunch of bullshit. You know, so people are saying that they're sick and tired of bullshit. I can't blame them. You know, we know you got to correct your status. So he doesn't take anybody anywhere. He just leaves them off with his scammers that take money out of their pockets. That's all he's doing. And then to
like
Mike, and Mike still defends the guy, and David's blocked Mike. Mike can't get through to him no more. He's blocked him. So I don't know why he still defends him the way he does. I don't get that, but that's what I got.
Okay, Josh. All right. I mean, you speak your mind, speak the truth. I like that about you. You always do. Dan, I mean, again, this is a problem within the Patriot community. Sorry, everybody we're trying to fix this country. We can't trust one another. We got to fix ourselves. We're talking about fixing the government. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, Joe. Well,
yeah.
Can I make a comment on this?
Not only that, David told me about this method for paying my bills or whatever, so I went and did it. I sent to 18 different places, and I got told it's fraud. They called me up and told me this is fraud. You know what? I got nothing on a recorded line. So how am I going to go before a judge with that, and they're going to play their recording where they told me it was fraud? I can't play ignorant now because they advised me that it's fraud, and now I'm in front of a judge, and I always try to tell you, go before a judge. Why? So I go to prison? That's what I'm headed to. All these people that follow David go to prison. And then they say, well, you know, he didn't do it this way. He didn't do that way. What the fuck are you supposed to do? What are you talking about? Bullshit. David doesn't even know.
Dan, go ahead, Dan. Hang on. Dan speak first.
There's a couple big problems here, okay? First of all, this notion that we can fix the republic is ludicrous. It's gone. Okay, you're not going to fix it because every avenue that you would normally have to fix it has been compromised. You don't have any avenue to peacefully fix the republic. It's gone. Okay? And I don't appreciate the fact that the gentleman from Texas on another show tried to put words in my mouth saying I promote violence. I never promote violence. Okay? However, I also don't promote victimhood of innocent people. And if somebody's got to die, I would much prefer that the felons and the violent, evil people do the dying and not the innocent people, okay? But I don't promote violence. I wish everybody would behave themselves. However, I'm not stupid, and I know I live in a world just as Christ said, I'm sending you out amongst wolves. That's why he told them to go buy a sword, okay? So the disciples all bought swords. And what do you think you do with a sword? Pick your teeth or file your nails with them? No, you use a sword to kill people trying to harm you and the people you love. Okay, so the idea of fixing the republic is gone because the republic has become Mystery Babylon. It's part of the Babylonian system that's run by these Khazarians and all these ultra-rich assholes that run the world. So forget that. We can't fix the republic, okay? We got to do what the Bible says, and that's come out of Babylon. That means we form ranks with like-minded people, and we learn how to do things the way our ancestors did it together. And I'll tell you what, there was a perfect example of this not long ago. Somebody was talking about the Great Depression. Now, my mother and father were born during the Great Depression, so they grew up as children in the Great Depression. So I know a little bit about that. And during the Great Depression, every county had its own economic system in America during the Depression. That's how people survived, because the bankers controlled everything else. So what did they do? They grew their own food. They were independent. They traded amongst themselves. They had their own forms of currency, whatever that was, whether it was paper or seashells, whatever they wanted to have. It doesn't matter. And then they were able to survive. So we have to think the same way. Now, look, if you think that doesn't have credibility, just look at everything they're trying to shut down. Because, again, they pumped all this data into artificial intelligence and quantum computers. All the data they've collected since the Great Depression, World War I, World War II, all that has been dumped into huge databases that the quantum computers are churning out to tell what these assholes need to do to control us. So the AI is telling them, well, you know what they did to survive during the Great Depression? That was 100 years ago. We're getting ready to try to put this shit on them again. You're going to have to cut off that stuff because they were able to survive when we tried to decimate them 100 years ago. So if you don't want them to survive, what are they doing? trying to take away our access to food, access to clean water. You can't own land, so therefore you can't have a garden, okay? Property tax came. So you don't even own your property anymore, because the Bible says that when a man owns his property, when he paid for it, it should never be taxed. Because if you're paying tax on it, you're a renter, okay? You're a renter. Yep. And so you don't have the ability to provide those essentials for your family, because this communist regime is slowly cutting off every exit to come out of the Babylonian system. The other key thing to survival has been in the past, and I don't know why it wouldn't be at this time, but in the past anyway, it was a homogeneous people working together. And we don't have that anymore. Okay? We are a complete cluster F as far as that goes. And that's been done on purpose. They know that. They know you cannot get cohesion amongst the mixed multitude. It's never been done before. They know that the odds of you doing it now are about the same, 0. Okay? So the only thing that works is commonality. That does not mean that various groups of people can't work together, because the German SS army proved that it does work, because the German Schutzstaffel, which is what SS stands for, it basically means security force. The German SS army was the best army on the battlefield. It was the most well-trained, best equipped, and it was the most moral group of guys out there. And here's the other thing a lot of people don't know. Most of the soldiers in the German SS were not even German. They were volunteers from other countries that had been smashed by the communists, so they knew what a terror these groups were. They volunteered to fight with the Germans, because the German army was the only army ever dedicated to stop the Red Terror. And so SS commanders were always in charge, but many times the troops in the field and the subordinate commanders were not even Germans. And sometimes they weren't even Caucasians. They were people from a completely different area, like Indians and things like that. So the point of it is, we can all work against a common enemy, but we can still have our homogeneity within our groups, because that's where our unity comes, because it's a family affair. And if people don't recognize that, we're never going to get out of this mess. I yield.
Hey, real quick, Sarge, you're a history guy. He was talking about the Great Depression, and you actually mentioned something about that, about the SS one time. I remember on Bert's show there. You want to comment on that real quick, and then I'll get to you, Mike.
Yeah, it is really rather ironic that one of the most diverse units in the history of warfare was Nazi SS. They literally took volunteers. They would categorize them like they would look a bit differently on the SS units that came from the Netherlands, like the Dutch Viking Division, and some of the other units that they recruited in the Wallonians they got from Belgium. They looked at them a little bit differently than they would look at, say, the Muslim divisions, the Handschar division that they recruited in Yugoslavia. But nonetheless, they were all part of the SS. It was really a remarkably ethnically diverse force. And if you study it, it's really amazing as how diverse it was. Now, I'm not saying they did it because they worshiped the god of diversity, because I don't believe that they did. But they did see it as a practical way to obtain legionnaires for their crusade against Bolshevism. And in that respect, what Dan said is absolutely correct. There's no doubt about it. But a lot of people seem to think the only SS units were like the Germanic SS units, like the Leibstandarte and the Das Reich and Totenkopf. But they were many more than that. Like you said, most of them were foreign legionnaires, because the SS also had to recruit from subjugated populations, because the Wehrmacht had the lion's share of the call on the German population of troops. And that was another reason they went to these these other ethnic peoples, in order to keep their army, their ranks fully staffed.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting.
Well,
we need to plenty apply. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's an interesting story. When Berlin finally fell, the SS unit that was protecting Hitler and the final elements of the National Socialists, I don't use the word Nazi, that's a Jewish term. So the National Socialists, anyway, the SS unit in charge of the final protection of that section of Berlin was all French.
Yeah.
Okay.
Charlemagne.
Now, they died. They all died, but about 12 guys. They were all killed. So the 12 guys surrendered to the Allies, and I believe it was the French General de Gaulle that interrogated them, and he wanted to know why. Why did you fight for the Germans? Well, it was obvious why. The history books want to make it like, whoa, why in the world would you fight for those nasty people? But that's because it's a made-up story. But General de Gaulle, after interviewing these 12 men, had them all lined up against the wall, and they shot them. So every single man in the last SS unit defending Berlin was murdered by the Allies. And I say murdered because Germany was on her knees, just like Japan was on its knees before we firebombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because the people in Washington had no plans on allowing anybody to get away without massacre, because that was a Holocaust. That's the true Holocaust, which means consumption by fire, basically a fiery sacrifice to their devil god. They need the victims, and they glorify in that sort of thing, massacre and death and carnage. And so there could have been a peaceful end to it. Hitler sued for peace throughout the war. It was always turned down because France, England, and the United States had a thing going, and eventually it was Russia too. They all had an economic thing going because the second part of actually it was only one war. World War I and World War II are just part A and part B of the same war. It was an economic war against the other Allied nations, against Germany, because Germany was becoming a stupendous economic power, and it was giving them too much competition. Besides that, the German engineers and German manufacturing could outproduce France and England and all the rest of the countries of Europe because they were just better at it. They're still better at it. Even as reduced as they've been, they're still typically better engineers and better manufacturers. So, that's a little bit of the history that most people don't even know. And it makes a big, big difference because we have been propagandized about virtually every story. And I do mean every story. And even Sarge, I'm sure, if he's done the study, knows that the ships that brought the African folks over here and put them into the slavery and all those ships were captained by, and the ship owners were all Jews. There may have been one or two exceptions here and there, but the vast majority were all Jews because they always make money in the vices and in the misery of human souls, okay? They've always been at the center of it, and they were a big, big center of it back then. And I spoke with two middle-aged black guys I worked with at a power plant in New Jersey many years ago. We got talking about this, and they both looked at me and said, "We know that." I said, "You know that?" I said, "I'm just finding it out." I said, "I thought this was like, wow." He goes, "Oh, no." He goes, "We know about that." So I guess in some circles, our folks, the African folks know about that. Maybe some don't. But it's important to remember that a lot of the atrocities throughout history, like to the Plains Indians, to the blacks from Africa, to the Irish, to all the people that have been subjugated to violence and being mistreated, many times the perpetrators were not Caucasians. They were Jews that people assumed were white, just like they do today. There's a lot of people that think Soros is a white guy. They think Nancy Pelosi's white, that her husband's white, that Peter Strzok is white, and all the rest of them. They're not white. A Jew is not white. He is not a Caucasian. And you can go to the Jewish Encyclopedia. It's right in there. You can go to a Jewish rabbi, and they'll admit it to you. Just like they know they're not the ancient Israelites. No, they're not. That's what the American churches are full of hypocrites and liars, and that's been a big part of the problem because they got us worshiping that little litter box in the Middle East. That's not who the Israel of the Bible is. The Israel of the Bible is a people, the descendants of Jacob. It's not a country. It's not a little region in Palestine. That's total bullshit. And you can tell that because they don't call their country Israel. They call it Israeli. And that's why they call themselves Israelis and not Israelites. The devil's in the details if you're paying attention. I yield.
All right. Mike, you've been waiting a while. Go ahead, Mike. You want to make a comment? I guess Josh about is David straight again or something? I don't know. What? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well,
my thing was
actually. Yeah,
my comment that I was going to make was about
wrong mic. Hang on, wrong mic. Hang on. I forgot there's two mics. I'm sorry. There's two mics. Hang on. The first mic they called me. Hang on, Mike. I'm sorry. Hang on. I'm talking to Mike in Florida real quick, okay? And then you can go. I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so,
down in Florida.
Yes. Yeah, so the point I spoke up there about his concerns for David, because that just kind of highlighted my point that people actually are looking to him in a way where he's just sharing knowledge and information that's true and accurate, but people get caught up in not being satisfied that he didn't do it for them. He didn't take them by the hand and walk them through and give them everything. So they start picking him apart and calling him a salesman and saying he's just trying to sell stuff. I mean, pretty much anybody that's on the internet is selling something. So, I mean, to me, the sales thing narrative is just another way of just trying to put the guy down. That's irrelevant. Everything he's saying is true, but what happens is people don't take the time to fully learn everything he's saying and digest it and read and study on their own. They want somebody else, and they want him to do it for them 9 times out of 10. And if he's not doing everything for them, then they get caught up in their own little anguish and frustration, and then say to hell with him, and then start creating their little cliques to badmouth him, which actually led to Dan's point right after Josh made that concern about David, is that in this world, it's not about looking to some other person to the only way that things are going to be made right in this world is when each individual looks to themselves and they get themselves right, which everybody has a whole lot to do to make that happen. There's all kinds of vices in this world they've created to set people away from being able to do that, whether it's the drugs, the stupid social trends with defacing the body with ink and tattoos and graffiti and earrings and garnishes and wigs and crazy hairstyles and outfits and behaviors and LGBTQ, rainbow, identity crisis issues or drugs or vaping and smoking or the next alcohol that's coming out, which is a poison to the body. Anything, the pornography, the just the frivolous, endless realm of frivolity and godlessness that people get caught up in, which is why Yahushua said, he who overcomes this world, the same will be saved. We have to, each individual has to overcome. And then when they do, like Dan said, then those people start connecting. They start creating communities, because even the movements that are being made, like, as you know, we've talked about it before, Joseph, with the Republic. There's obviously a lot of concerns expressed by myself and others of that having been infiltrated, hijacked, and being a controlled opposition, a controlled movement by those, again, that are trying to steer everybody into their new world order, one world government, corporate, worldwide digital currency monetary system. And that's Babylon. That's what Dan was saying. There's no way that, which, to back up again, with the fact that everything David said is true, a lot of what he says that's absolutely true and accurate will not work in that system. You cannot take things that are of truth or of God or of what we would call the Republic and expect it to work in this Babylonian system, in this corporate construct. It won't. They're going to reject it. They're going to throw you in jail. So there's that aspect of it. So ultimately it comes back to, yes, each individual getting themselves right with the maker, the creator, God Almighty, and those people organizing together, and meeting up, which to a fair degree, I would say everybody on this call falls into that category. I think everybody on this call, knows what their flaws and sins are, and they're working on them in their own ways, and they confess their sins, and they strive to overcome it, and they are seeking to do the right thing, and they're praying to God and giving God the glory every day, and they're all trying to communicate like we're doing on the phone now. But we need to try to encourage people to start doing that more and more in their own local neighborhoods. I mean, we could be on these national calls for really no other reason than to encourage each other, and also to try to encourage other people that listen to this call to start doing that themselves in their own town. I'm lucky that I live 10 miles north of Dan. Dan lives 10 miles south of me here in South Florida. He's like my number one go-to guy here. As you know, over the last couple of years, I've called him my wingman, my right-hand man, Dan the man. Praise God, Yahweh brought us together. My son and I have a great connection with Josh in Wisconsin. I'm laughing when I'm saying this because I'm laughing in a sad kind of way, in a facetious, funny kind of way. My son and I were on the phone with Josh the other night, and Josh made the point. He's all alone, the poor guy. It's like he's over there in Wisconsin, man, and he can't find, he feels like he's just surrounded by a bunch of, godless people. He doesn't really see a unit around him up there. It's like we wish he was here, And same with you, Joe, in North Carolina. You're there, we're here. I mean, we are a community, but we're just an online community. But we all should start really putting forth, as many efforts as we can to try to find, those children of God. True, because that's what it comes down to. You're either a child of God or you're not. You either have the Spirit or you don't. And we need to connect with those that are truth seekers. Because, again, that's not a church goer. That's not some holy roly, I'm going to church and praise Jesus. That's not necessarily who the person is. It's the person who's absolutely seeking truth to the ultimate degree in every level, no matter what it might be, and allowing the Bible to be at least the number one reference point. There are other sources. There are other references. We have to cross-reference. And as Dan would say, use empirical evidence from various sources and put the pieces of the puzzle together, because it's been, part of God's plan to let the enemy, mix things up and fabricate and deceive.
Mike.
So
I just got other people here. Just want to let you know. Trying to keep it like 2 or 3 minutes.
I mean, I've been listening to Dan talk for an awful long time. I mean, I think Dan's
my wingman though. Dan's my wingman. We're really trying to turn it over to him.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But
hang on, Mike. I'll come back to you, Mike. Hang on, I'll come back to you. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. The first Mike that was on earlier. Go ahead. He's been waiting a long time. Go ahead.
So what I want to say is a couple things here. One. I'm looking at, a list of Jewish American gangsters, like Arnold Rothstein, who threw the World Series in 1919, and Meyer Lansky and stuff like that. Those were criminal Jewish gangsters, in the early part of the 20th century, and they have a whole list of people like that, and they are gangsters. Okay, now as far as I want to get you guys feeling the wedges that have been driven into the patriot community probably started back in the mid '90s or whatever, when we were hearing about these groups that are training like up in Michigan and up in that, and they got called terrorists and things of that nature, and the government went after these people and said, "Well, you're not supposed to be doing this." The whole thing with the militia movement back then, right? And the government said, "You're not supposed to be doing it. You can't be doing this," and they did it anyway. And the government went after these people. That's how they work this stuff. Okay. We're gonna start a militia up in Michigan, Louisiana, Florida, whatever, and the government says no, you're not, you can't do that. You have to be in an organized army and all that stuff. That's wrong. That's not right. That's not how the founders That's not how the founders thought this stuff up, militias were a big part of, the whole thing with Paul Revere's ride was go and alert the militias that the British were coming, right? That was the whole thing.
What are you trying to say? So what are you trying to say? If we do our own thing, like Dan was saying, that the government's going to come after us?
We talk about this republic. Your two guests are talking about this stuff. Well, what the people that want to keep the status quo do is they try to drive wedges in between these groups, right? To break us all apart, right?
Dan, you want to answer that?
Well, of course they do. Divide and conquer, okay? We seem to have forgotten that old adage, but our enemies, they live by it, okay? So everything that's been happening for the past probably almost 200 years, if you do the study, has been to divide and conquer. Every single thing that they promote does that. None of it brings us together, unifies us, or any of that. It's divide and conquer, a typical communist ploy. And I'm trying to drive that into the heads of the people. I've been doing this for a long time. It's starting to take effect, but it's taken this long. We are under a communist insurgency. And if you don't know what that means, grab your damn electronic brain and look it up. Okay? Now, back in my day, you grabbed a dictionary, and it actually took you a few minutes to thumb through it and find it. But today, you've got your little electronic ones that will do that for you. Look up insurgency, because that's what you're living under. It is a Jewish, Zionist, Talmudic, communist, because those are all synonyms, insurgency. And if you look at every single thing that's happening and who's behind it and who is funding it, it is a communist insurgency. Just remember that. You're fighting a war against the people that have no rules, have no empathy, have no standards, and will never give up and never give in. That's who you're up against. And we're trying to fight like getting into the boxing ring with our gloves on while they're getting in there with a knife in their side, a pair of brass knuckles on, and no gloves. And we wonder why we're losing and we're getting beat up all the time. You got to learn how to fight fire with fire. That's what I say. Fight fire with fire. We're not violent people. Leave us alone. I'm part of that group that wants to be left alone. I know how to fight. I know how to take a life, but I don't want to do it. Leave us the F alone. But they're not going to leave us alone. Communists never leave you alone. That's the sad and the very hard truth of it. They will never leave you alone. And they will do everything they can to divide us and set one group against the other, whether it's along racial lines, gender lines, education, economic status, jobs, you name it. It doesn't matter. That's why the communists always politicize. Go read the books by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. They always politicize everything because they cannot win with logic. Are you?
All right, I got Josh, and I got 330, and I got 269. Hang on, Mike. Hang on. Go ahead. You want to comment on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, Dan, we saw what they did to Senator McCarthy in the 60s, Joseph McCarthy in the 50s, when he tried to go after the communists here in America. All right? We saw what they did to him, Senator McCarthy.
Right. They did the same thing to Congressman James Traficant not too long ago. They did the same thing to Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney. And they just murdered Thomas Massey's wife.
We get Josh back on. All right, hang on. I got 269 too. Go ahead, 414. I think that's Josh. Go ahead, because it's David. We were talking about him earlier. Go ahead. 414. No. All
okay,
right.
I'm here.
Go ahead.
I don't know I was in.
All right, go ahead, Josh.
So, this back to the David Strait thing, he says in his videos how to take a bill they send to you, turn it into a coupon and send it back, and then that discharges the debt, okay? So I took that method all the way to the nth degree. I sent a notary presentment to the head of their legal department. And by doing so, you're threatening them with court. They think it's an attorney that's saying them this stuff. They talk to me as though I'm an attorney now. They respond and they call me. They forced a response because I was saying it off just regular, and nobody responded. They just flushed it. It didn't matter. If they said something, they said this is bullshit, and that's all it was. So this way now, it tells them I'm coming at you seriously now, and they took me seriously, took me very seriously, and they told me it's fraud. Okay, that's what it is. And I had a CEO call me of a bank, telling me it's fraud. I think it was USAA. That's what it was. Yeah, USAA CEO called me, and also the head legal department for Wells Fargo called me. Those two reached out to me on the phone. Other ones sent responses telling me it's bullshit because they have to take it seriously because they don't want to be in court the wrong way, so they're going to make sure that they respond. So, what did I do wrong? Nothing. I did anything wrong. I did everything. I spent money on all this, put a stamp on it. I figured out the value of the stamp I had to put on it. If I want to discharge $10,000, how much of a stamp I have to put on it by the Stamp Act. Every little nuance, every little detail, it's all bullshit. And all David says, well, just go after the Social Security Trust bill. Let's do that. And doing that, I got to go and challenge Social Security to take over the whole thing when they're going to deny me. And then I have to request a hearing over in Baltimore where I'm going to sit in front of Janet Yellen and go toe to toe with her. Really. So far, nothing's worked. So far, nothing. So I'm not gonna roll the dice on that because I could end up in prison. They want you to go.
Well, that's it. Josh, you're right. You are right about that, Josh. We got the Freemen from Montana. They've been sitting in prison since what, 1994? They weren't going to pay their mortgage to the bank, the Federal Reserve. We know, it's a fraud and whatnot, but it's not going to work. They're using all this stuff, putting paper plates on their car for license plate tags, and next thing you know, they're sitting in prison. They're surrounded by the FBI. I mean, yeah, this is dangerous stuff.
You can't fight fraud with fraud. You can't fight fraud with fraud. You can't do it. You got to establish your own jurisdiction. You got to establish your own way of living, your own way of doing things. You have to be recognized, and then you can go out here and conduct yourself like Native Americans do. That's what Anna Van Ryck's working on, and that makes sense to me. And these people demonize her all the time. Doesn't make now I'm looking like, wait a minute, you're demonizing her for what? The same thing you're talking about doing, but you're not getting done. You're not doing any of that shit. But you're talking about it like it's shit.
Yeah, I wouldn't say. I would say to them, truth is fraud. To them, it's fraud to them. It doesn't mean it's not right or true. It doesn't mean that it's not true. The Social Security account, for instance, right? We know that you can take your birth certificate and your Social Security and type those numbers in and see your name associated and attached to millions of dollars that's being traded on Walmart, on the Wall Street. But that's.
I'm trying to look for that. I can't find it, to be honest with you. But hang on, Mike, I want to talk about that a little bit more. But I got two more callers waiting that are new callers, so they've been waiting this whole show. Go ahead, 330. Go ahead.
What's going on, guys? It's Dave. Yeah.
What's up?
Hey, I wanted to tell Josh I followed a guy named Yusef L. and did the discharge, and I had no problem with it whatsoever through my utility company and my electric bill, and no problem whatsoever because he turned around after I watched all this, like the same stuff you're talking about exactly. I watched it all. It was like a dead end. And then all of a sudden, one guy came on and talked to him, and then he came back and said that we had been sending all this information to the wrong people. You can't send it to the CEO. You can't send it to the cash register lady. You have to send it to the department, what they would have under like accounts payable or billing, specifically the head of that department. So whatever company, it could be Verizon or whoever, you have to look it up and then address them with a registered letter, of course. And then once, because these are the people that know what's going on with that law that was passed in 1933 for us to be able to do this. But they've gone so many different ways to make it difficult. That's why we have such a hard time trying to do all these processes. But my thing is, David Strait, I've talked to him on the phone one time, bullshitted with him a little bit about some race cars. Phenomenal guy. I like watching him talk. But I have yet to see him talk about actually going into these maritime jurisdiction corporate laws, corporation courts, and going to battle with it, because you can't. We can't. We are told by everybody we can't do public and private together. So how in the hell am I going to go try to be in the sovereign citizen thing? I never did like that. The guys that roll their windows up, you're a bunch of dumbasses. They yank you out of your cars. You're a bunch of fools. You don't even know how to write your own name and curse with 90% of these people, but they see a 10-minute clip on TikTok, and they think they're going to go stand in front of the court and have the battle royal with regardless of who it is. You're not walking into anybody's court. I don't care if it's Captain Kangaroo. If it's his court and he knows how to run it, you got to be on the ball. You got to know the lingo. You got to know how to present yourself. And you can't go in there stumbling and dumbling, reading off a paper that some guy sent you for whatever. And it's amazing to me that we know that the corporate laws are in place in this country, but yet they do what they do. They run all of our judicial system, and I think Josh might have said it, or even Dan. They have such a stranglehold over that, and that's the fear of the hammer coming down. Because anytime you do something, 90% of the people are scared to death they are going to go to jail for whatever reason because you confront these bastards. Well, it's true. So when you have to go to court with these people on our situation, whatever it would be, just as a private, however you want to handle it, we're in a totally different scenario. Does that make sense? You can't go to a football judge or an umpire and ask him to call balls and strikes at the baseball game.
I get it. Hey, Dave, I want to get together with you through Mike can put us together, and now you can help me get through this, because I'll go at this again. I'll go at it for round 3.
Okay. And a lot of this problem with the thing is, too, is if I watch all these different channels of these guys trying to do this discharge deal, you got people calling in or making comments, and they're the same ones that roll their windows up, I think, just about. But they think there's cash money to be had. There is no money. It's a tax credit. It's a discharge of debt. That's what these people don't understand. They're not satisfied with having their utility bills or their property taxes or their, things, your mortgage taken care of. They want to go buy gold watches, stereos, cars, all the bullshit you don't need to survive. That's basically what this is played for.
Hang on. We got a retired Illinois State Trooper on the phone with us right now, and he'll flat out tell you that he's dealt with, all right, with this, you're driving without a driver's license, you're going to jail. It doesn't matter what you say. There's no magical phrase, no paper plates or anything you're going to put on your car. I'll let him explain it as soon as I get to this other caller first.
We have in place the Supreme Court ruled 1933 in favor of this law that they put in place, this amendment, and it took care of it. It's in the wording, it's there, but you have to. They've picked it apart and they've moved it. They've done this, this, and this. You have to do this, jump through the hoops to get to it. But if you do it right, it can be taken care of. But you can't go charging gold watches, shit like that.
Okay. All right, Kate. Okay, all right, hang on.
My question is, how do we approach this maritime law in the position that we're in? We can't battle these guys at corporate, and they're not going to turn loose of that. There's no way. There's too many people that make money off of that.
That's the question we're asking. That's what we're trying to do here. Okay, we're trying to ask questions about solutions, but we're going on and on about other stuff. We're trying to come up with those solutions. That's the question, Cave, right there. Yeah, but hang on. Let me bring out 269 and then I'm going to bring back the mic. Go ahead, 269.
Yeah, guys, John in Michigan. Hey, if you're in a fair fight, your tactics suck. Okay?
There is no fair fight. There's no rules to fighting either. far as I'm concerned.
My exact point. And you're trying to tie yourself to rules. If you're trying to tie yourself to rules, your tactics suck. I yield.
All right. Okay. I thought you had more to say, but okay. All right.
No,
let's see. Sarge.
A great point he made.
Sarge, Sarge, we discussed this before about the driver's license thing. If you were a state trooper for 20 years, what? Tell me what happens. How you handle this now? This guy. Is there any magical? I mean, is there any way that you could see someone winning this in court? Because you've been to court. I know you've arrested people. I mean, and you've talked with a lot of people, other officers, and. I mean, is there any truth to this? Sarge, you there? I had him on the phone. He was on earlier.
He's probably
go ahead, then, Mike.
Mute button.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
so,
he's probably muted. Go ahead, Mike.
If Sarge comes on, let him talk, but I'll answer your question, Sarge. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I was on mute, Joe. I'll wait till Mike is finished.
All right, go ahead, Mike.
Brother. I'll wait. All right,
so, Mike. Wait,
go ahead, Mike. Finish up.
Which one? Go ahead.
All right, Mike. So Tave made the ultimate point that it can be done, but you got to do it right. And the problem is the point I was making about it's true you can do it. Tave filled in the blanks that you have to do it right. And one of the things too about David, and I'll say it, just for the record now, David said. Well, no, I won't say it. It's because it's personal. It'll be directed at an individual, and I don't want to do that right now. I'll talk to that individual in private and tell him what David had said about an issue, and then he can deal with that issue. The point to answer my answer to the question that I was going to say before, and Sarge can say what he's going to say on it. But of course, it's true because there's all kinds of examples of people that succeed. And there's plenty of examples where people get thrown in jail. So again, the point is, it is true. We do have the right. I was just talking to somebody the other day who told me he was a police officer, and he says, "Yeah, if you tell me you don't need a license, I'll say, okay, I'll give you a free ride to jail." And I said, "Well, then you're violating people's constitutional rights because the Supreme Court has ruled that we have the right to travel uninfringed with no fees, no licensure, no restrictions whatsoever. We're free to travel in a private automobile. You have the right to. It's a right to do that." But we know that the corporate fraud system is all working in commerce, and they don't like that, and they don't want people to know about it. So they're going to be fighting against that reality tooth and nail. And as a result, you're going to have some people prevail and some people that lose. I yield.
Sarge, go ahead.
I'll tell you,
I think we looked this up the other night about Supreme Court cases, but
yeah, the Illinois Vehicle Code, Chapter 95 and a half. It's very explicit about who is eligible to obtain a driver's license, what are the requirements for obtaining a license, who may operate what type of motor vehicle on what public roads in the state of Illinois. And I encountered these sovereign citizens about 6 times in my career, and never once did any of those arguments prevail in court. And not just my own experience, but over the years talking to bunches of other officers who encountered these people. And never once the laws involving Chapter 95 and a half, the Illinois Vehicle Code regarding driver's licensure and all the other requirements attached to it were unconstitutional. Now, they did beat cases sometimes, but the reason they beat the cases was because the police had made some sort of procedural error or violated their rights in some way. It didn't have anything to do with the constitutionality of the Illinois Vehicle Code. And if this ruling by the Supreme Court is precedental, and remember, every ruling by the Supreme Court is part of the common law. It becomes precedent as common law. I don't understand why someone is not able to invoke it and then be able to show how it applies to the situation that is at hand involving them. I just don't get it. If it's so clearly cut from the Supreme Court, why has no one been able to cite the precedent that the Supreme Court has created that has not been reversed and then apply it to their case? Yet, still, no one has been able to do it.
Jurisdiction. It's all about cases all the time saying they don't have jurisdiction over a local court's jurisdiction. Even if they have conflicting jurisdictions. My son's dealt with that with a couple federal cases already, dealing with the county. When he brought up his case, the federal court system said it didn't have jurisdiction because he did not go through the process at the local level and the state level to declare his rights. You have to go through that process, and if you bypass, they're going to say we have no jurisdiction, and they dismiss it without prejudice.
Yeah, they kick it back down to the smaller courts again. Yes, yeah, that's what they're doing. Just like with the ATF.
Basically,
right.
well, here's my question. And I have a question, and my question is this:
right.
Has the Supreme Court ever granted certiorari to anybody invoking this precedent? I guess that's a more relevant question. Have they ever? Because the Supreme Court can hear or dismiss any case that they choose, and I want to know: has they granted cert to anybody invoking this precedent by the Supreme Court? Maybe that's what
anybody's been in front of them.
I would say the answer to that is no, because there's a fellow named Grant who I haven't really brought him up much because he's kind of a person Josh met in Tennessee when he went up there to meet with Eric, and I've talked to him on the phone at great length. And this guy, he's the pinnacle. This guy has everything down, and he says that he has everything in order for people to take all these issues that we're always discussing to the Supreme Court. He just needs somebody that's willing to do it. My son said he'll do it, and I said I'll do it. So we're actually planning on trying to put something together so we could take it to the Supreme Court, because actually these issues have not yet been brought to the Supreme Court, and they need to be.
Wait a second here. I thought
there are inferior federal courts. Has any of the inferior federal courts cited the precedent? Because, look, if it's a Supreme Court precedent, any inferior federal court can cite the precedent in order to overturn a verdict by a lower state court or a lower federal court. Has any federal court ever invoked this precedent?
Okay.
They never took what happened with Trump in court.
Guys, Dan wants to talk. Dan wants to talk, guys. Dan wants to talk. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, we're not governed by precedent. Okay, I did a thing back in the 1980s in Ohio when I first challenged driver's licenses and registration, and the little girl that was the assistant county prosecutor tried to tell me that the precedent has been set. I said, little lady, my constitutional right to come to this court and demand a jury trial does not depend on precedent. I said, so you can take your precedent and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. We don't work by precedent, okay? They try to get you to think that a precedent is going to make you lose, but every person has a right to their day in court, period. The other thing is, like the Supreme Court is an appellate court. It's not a legislative body. It does not have any authority to make law. It only has the authority to adjudicate whether something adheres to the Constitution or not. It's an appellate court. It's not even an actual open court to decide any matter. It is simply there to say whether or not a lower court followed the Constitution or not. We have gone to the point where we've allowed them to brainwash us into thinking that precedent matters because it doesn't, and that the Supreme Court somehow has the right to make law. It doesn't. It's simply an appellate court, period.
Okay.
Good point.
Anybody?
Well, the problem is,
I would just say something like the ATF. Look what we're dealing with the ATF. Every time I turn on something at the news again, it's another Supreme Court decision to kick it back down to the lower courts, the 9th and the 5th District Circuit, and because the ATF is writing laws that hasn't even gone through Congress on different weapons, and they're getting away with it. They have gotten away with it. But, I mean, it's kind of coming to a head now where they're starting to have a little bit of – they think that people are waking up, so you're going to have the pushback. Because that basically, to me, that's the only thing that's keeping us from being on the teeter-totter, going full-blown over the edge and falling off, are the guns, and they're scared of the patriots. That's the honest to God's truth. That's it. And they're not going to address it in their maritime courts. They're going to lock us down and throw the key away. We've seen that already.
Yeah, here's
January 6th.
Another interesting question to the Supreme Court. is that, and kind of along the lines of what Dan was saying, simply rule if something's constitutional or not. And again, we've heard the laws cited, the Supreme Court laws, several, that relate to a person does have a constitutional right to travel without any licensure. So the Supreme Court has ruled that, but the lower courts are not upholding it, and they're allowing the banking system, which is what the courts are, to continue raping and robbing and pillaging people with licenses and fees and registrations and tags. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And some people would argue that the Supreme Court and certain other powers are waiting for the people to rise and take back their authority and their power, which is essentially what the whole movement of the Republic is about, because it has to be bottom up. It has to be the people standing up and taking their rights back and taking their authority back, which they're not.
What is that? Well, when are we taking back that authority, Mike? What's the logistics here? We're on an open platform here, national broadcast. We're trying to come up with solutions. What's going on? What are we waiting? I mean, what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for? I mean, everyone keeps pointing the finger at themselves or everybody else. So what has to be done here? What's the solution?
I've always said, and I'll say it again, the closest I've come to it, the closest I can see it, is Eric Dingus and the efforts he's been putting forth with the Republic for the United States of America. That's as close as you're going to get at this point, short of Revelation 21 and the kingdom of God coming down upon the earth with 12 pearly gates that only certain people are going to walk through. That's the closest thing that exists at this point that I can possibly see of everything I've looked at in this world.
Hey, Mike, how is Eric going to go into their court? How is Eric going to go into their courts and win? We know we can't do that.
It's not about you. Don't want to go into their. You don't want to go into their courts, and that goes back to one of the issues I was going to bring up with Josh earlier too, or maybe it was you, Dave. David Strait himself has says you don't go in their courts. Now he gives examples of what you should say and what you would do if you do go in their courts, but he first and foremost always says don't even go into the damn courts. You shouldn't be in there to begin with. It's a different jurisdiction. You're not in their jurisdiction. They don't have jurisdiction over you, so you shouldn't even be there. So that in itself ends up being an issue, right? Well, what happens?
We are in their jurisdiction until we change our status to not be in their jurisdiction, and that's what Anna Wright's working on. She has a method for that, and this guy Eric Davis, he's failing all the time. He just quit again. You know, he's always quitting. You can't get nothing done.
No, well, Eric is Eric. He's got his personal issues and quirks like everybody does, but Eric is absolutely. It's like I always said, David Strait is like casting the big net. He's waking people up across in a large scale, getting people to understand all these realities. Eric Dingus is like being in counties, spending his time going to counties, talking to commissioners and sheriffs and people, and getting people to stand up. There are groups in Tennessee now that have stood up. There are groups in Michigan that are working on it. There's groups in Texas that have done it. And there's groups
what do you mean
in Florida.
By stand up, Mike? What do you mean by stand up? What do you mean by stand up?
Well,
background noise. Where we got background noise, please?
Eric has explained that process. It's about a person standing up and saying, yes, I will take the authority as being a living man with this 30-person assembly, and you organize the assembly. There's a process for it where those 30 people represent the Republic. And remember, it's not the de facto.
Now we end up in their courts, Mike. Now we end up in their courts because if I stand up and I want to represent as a living man.
No.
Yeah, under Eric's method, but the thing is, look, you go with Eric's method, she's doing the same thing. Stand up the Republic like you're talking about, and then you have to change your status to standing because you have to be resurrected to stand up.
And you call upon.
Talk over
you call upon.
I know.
You call upon. What? You call. Yeah, Josh he likes doing that to me just to mess around with me. Eric says.
Well, you'll go on for an hour if nobody interrupts you.
Use the military, the DAG. There's a system.
You make 5 different points and keep yammering on. You don't make one point and wait for someone else to respond.
Well, look. Okay. Here's what I'm trying to understand. Here's what I'm trying to understand here. Okay, now I agree completely that for decades, the United States Supreme Court was acting like an ongoing constitutional convention, literally amending the Constitution without benefit of the amendatory process or a constitutional convention. So we understand that. We understand they are not a legislative body. We understand they are merely an appellate court that is supposed to apply, not interpret, but apply the Constitution as it is written. But in this case, what I'm hearing from people here, they are saying that we have a precedent that buttresses the point of view people are saying, that you don't have to have a license to use a motor vehicle to travel on the public highway. What I am consistently not understanding is why no one is able to cite this precedent before any inferior court to have it stand up as a case to bring forth it to be established.
You keep standing around saying
no
motor vehicle is
it?
in commerce. A motor vehicle is in commerce. They're talking about a private automobile. They're two different words.
Yeah, but a Supreme Court ruling is not secret. I mean, it's public. I mean, once the ruling is made up there, you can go to the archive. You can see every single Supreme Court decision that's ever been rendered.
That's a good point.
So I'm saying, how is it possible then they keep getting away with making everybody have a driver's license? The Supreme Court has said you don't have to have one. And no one can challenge it on the basis of that precedent in any case, and you get people arrested, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of times a year in every state in the union for not having a driver's license?
Yes,
I know, that's my point.
The biggest point of this is you have so many municipalities that employ so many people through this process of making money off of the taxes, the fees, and then your license. You know, people think, I just paid $12,000 for a truck. Cash. Boom. I don't own that truck. I got a certificate of title. I don't have the actual manufacturer's paperwork from the build of this vehicle. So I have what the state of Ohio has given me is a certificate of title. So anything you pay taxes on, and these government entities run these corporations, and it's a buddy system. Basically what happens is my cousin, my uncle, my brother, my sister, my neighbor, everybody can get in on this, and that's where it's all gone amok because you've got the corrupt ones that are in the political positions, and then they start creating these agencies. Another one here, another where. Okay, now the prison system's so big, now we need to do
okay,
another
but
type
Dave,
of
how do you break
system.
away from that, Dave? How do you break
can't.
away from that? You
There's
can't.
two ways.
Okay.
There's only two times I've seen it happen.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead. Hang on, Dan.
And the Bolshevik Revolution.
Let him finish, Dan. No, go ahead.
It's the only two times.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, you know,
ahead, Dan.
I feel the frustration everybody's got because I've been in the patriot community for a very, very long time, ever since I got out of the Air Force. And I've been part of the identity movement, which is the biblical side of things, and that's been a struggle because most people don't want to hear the truth. So, but here's the problem. We in America have become so soft, we think we can go to war against the beast and no blood is going to get shed by either side, okay? First of all, that's totally ludicrous. You can't fight any kind of serious campaign and not shed blood. Meaning whether it's literal or figurative, it doesn't matter. Whether it's persecution, jail time, fines, whatever. If you're going to fight a system, there's going to be pain. You can't fight for your rights and not have pain. Even the Supreme Court has said that. The only people that have rights that are upheld are those who are willing to stand for them, fight for them. Now, the very word fight does not have the connotation of goody two-shoes, kumbaya, we can all get along and be great and happy together. No, fight means literally struggle. Mein Kampf, my struggle, okay? That's what it's all about. So, first of all, people have to understand, you're in a war. Let that sink in. This is not playtime. You're in a war with a force, with a group of people who mean to destroy your way of life and your family in the process. Let that sink in. Now, thinking that you can go to war with any entity and nobody gets hurt or harmed or put in a bad way is, again, ludicrous. You don't have the mentality of a warrior. A warrior understands that there's going to be price to pay on both sides of the fence. He also understands that a good soldier prepares for war and prays for peace, because all of us that have been soldiers know the last thing you want is warfare. But we also know, just like the Founding Fathers found out, that when you're up against a force that will not capitulate, will not give up, will never give in, you at some point are going to be force upon force, which means each side is going to pay. Just like Thomas Jefferson and the Patriots said, the tree of liberty must be nourished with the blood of tyrants and patriots from time to time. It's a struggle. It's called life. Get over it. Part of how we become who we are. It's how you let everybody know, including our Creator, what you're made of and what you're willing to fight for.
Right on.
Okay? We think we can make our points without hurting anybody's feelings, let alone hurting their bodies. I'm at war, and I make it very clear. I've made it clear for 25 years on the radio. I know they listen in. I've let them know. I have nothing but contempt for you. Come to my door. Kill me if you want to. But I'm going to let you know, as long as I have this mic, as long as my Father above gives me breath, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. You are evil, and I will do everything in my power to destroy you.
And me with him.
And I'm going to tell you
that's what we're doing. Dan, that's a good point.
You know, and the thing is, we talk about Europa.
Exactly, Joe.
The last battle, we talk about that all this time. We're watching that movie, that documentary, and it is exactly to the T playing out in today's society, in today's time. In every aspect you look at it, from how it started, who maybe not atrocity-wise yet, but that isn't too far off if it was to happen. You know, you're looking, history repeating itself. You can't tell people this in America because they're, like Dan said, they're too soft. So, and I've said it from day one, drag them out by the hair. If that's what we got to do to these people and hold them accountable, then so be it. But these people won't realize what's going to happen until they get punched in the mouth and they open the door.
Guys. Hang on, Dan wasn't finished. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, the other point I wanted to make was the fact that everybody is saying, what do we do, as if we have to do everything together. That's not where we're at, okay? The Founding Fathers weren't there. That's not where we're at. There will be a spark at some point that will unite many of us, but we're not there yet. Control over yourself. Are you doing everything you can do to make you the healthiest person? Because if you're not healthy, you're no damn good to me on the battlefield. If you're not healthy, you're no damn good to me in the congregation, because you're never going to learn. All you're going to be is concerned about your poor health. So are you doing everything to be healthy? Are you doing everything you can to be educated? I'm going to tell you something. I've been into their courts, okay? I've been into their courts, and I have noticed this. A judge, a county prosecutor, public defender, the state police that were at the back of the room, everybody there that I met while I was in that court that day respected somebody who stood their ground, understood what was going on, kept their cool, and spoke with authority and knowledge. Everybody in that room respected that. Everybody. Okay? If you have done everything you can to be that person, then you've done the best you could. What's it say in Scripture? Don't go into their courts. But if you're trapped, do not worry. I will give you the words to say. And I'm going to tell you, I've been there numerous times, and I'll be darned if the Holy Spirit didn't give me the right thing to say at just the right time. But I still had to maintain my composure. I dressed well. I looked like a decent person. I carried myself well. I walked with confidence. I knew who I was. I knew they were wrong. I knew I was on the right side morally and legally, and I stood my ground. But I did not lose my temper. I did not call people names. I didn't go down that road at all. And the enemy treated me exactly the way they did to Christ when he walked this earth. They were intimidated by that kind of persona. If you're that kind of person, you don't need to worry about it. Whether you make it through or not, doesn't matter. You've done the best you can. Guess what? We were never given a guarantee in this world that everything would come up roses, that everything would be just fine. We'd never get hurt. We'd never bleed. We'd never break a bone. We'd never hurt a feeling. I was a boy, that's the way I wanted to be. I never wanted to hurt anybody's feeling. I never wanted to hurt them. And guess what? That's not life. You're gonna break a few eggs in the process of making an omelet. All right? It's just the way it is. The only thing we can control is ourselves. And that's why I've said for the past 40 years, I will fight the enemy if I'm the only person standing in the road. I don't care.
Amen.
I will fight them with every tool that my Creator gives me. Every tool. I will fight them till I die. When enough of us have that attitude, then there comes the next part where you see the righteous army stand up and you start seeing mobs of people taking politicians and hanging them in a tree because that's where they belong. And you see murderers hanging in trees instead of collaring them in some prison system. Okay?
Brother.
That's where we have to go because the only thing we control is the guy staring at you in the mirror. I yield.
Hallelujah, brother. Yeah, let me just add a couple words to Dan. My people suffer for lack of knowledge. One's point about being educated. My people, God's people suffer for lack of knowledge. And then that goes to the point Tabe was making about it just ain't, when he was making the point about Europa, it's not necessarily at the point, well, how'd you say, Tabe, of the point of gore or, tragedy? Actually, I would disagree. It's just a different kind of tragedy. They got homosexuals and transvestites in our schools teaching our children at 5 years old to be lesbians and for little girls to cut their titties off and for little boys to cut their weenies off. No, it's tragic. It's just a different form of tragedy at this point. It's sick. It's perverted. It's godless, and they need to be called out and they need to be stopped.
Well, Mike, it really isn't any different. Look what those guys back then actually had to deal with that. The book burnings. That's what Hitler was burning. The transgender criteria that was being forced on him by the Bolsheviks. That was the book burnings that were going on. People don't talk about that. That's what's going on.
All right, guys, we got to do the closing talk here. We got to do the closing so everybody gets a chance to talk here.
It is that bad. I'm just saying on a scale of nailing people to the side of a bar.
Closing. Time out. Everybody's going to get a closing thoughts here. We got time to start doing that. So just everybody will get a final say here at the end. So just however time you want, whatever time you want to take, just say whatever you got to say. So here's your chance. All right, Sarge, you get to go first tonight. Go ahead, man.
Okay. Well, it's a lot of food for thought here tonight. But look, it's not like at the moment, despite the fact that they're baby steps, things are getting worse. Chevron deference was huge to begin to rein in the bureaucratic excesses of the regulatory state. I know these people are going to try to find a way around it, but that's what they're going to have to do because it was pretty clear. They're not allowed to do anything that Congress says they can't do. And I think that is going to be very important for people to begin asserting the rights that they have and get away from these damn bureaucratic regulators just making up stuff on their own and allowing these politicians to evade responsibility for the things that they are supposed to be responsible for.
Hallelujah.
That's it. All right. Okay, Mike, go ahead, man.
Yeah, hallelujah on that, brother. Sarge made a darn good point there. It's like another crack with some light glimmering through it with that court decision today. So, Dan, I just feel like I can't say anything because his last words were it, So I would just say, let's recontemplate what Dan was just saying a minute ago. I yield. God bless everybody.
Okay, well, you don't want to follow up on the David Strait thing real quick? I know you had a lot to say about that because, like I said, but you never answered. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but you never answered my question. Was he in the Rose Garden with Donald Trump?
No, I did answer your question for that.
You did?
He says.
Okay, I didn't hear it.
He says. So, I got to either take him at his word and at the same time, just go with if he's making stuff up to embellish himself to get a bigger following, you know what? More power to him because he's waking people up to what's going on. Who knows? I don't know.
All right. Okay. All right. No problem. All right. I mean, you can't speak for the man. I was only going on what you thought you knew or what you know what I mean? So that's all. All right. Dave, you want to say?
And what he says. So I can only take him at his word. And if he's lying, then, you know.
Yep. Dave, go ahead, man.
All right. With everything being said, I just think that, you know, we've talked about the Europa, the last battle, and how what a game changer that was. It has been for me. It's changed my life entirely. And if it's not Europa, the last battle, it's going to be the Thomas Massey's wife's story. That may be what this country needs to see, is that someone that's actually speaking out against this cult that's in power and the severity of what happens, because when their rabbis and their beliefs are to destroy everyone, their women and their children, and they did it in the Bolshevik Revolution, they did it in Germany, they've done it all over the world. America is the last stand. This is it. This is the America, the last battle. We might as well just make that documentary up, Mike, and let's start rolling the films, because we are witnessing exactly history repeating itself, because the same people that have their self-fulfilling prophecy being fulfilled are the directors of this movie right now that we are all stuck in, and it's going to their plan, because they are taking our land, slowly taking our rights. You know, freedom of speech seems to be on the chopping block everywhere you turn. You're censored. You know, I'm surprised we can even get through a whole show with Joe's blog talk here. You know, they don't chop it up or put the whammies on it or whatever you want to call it. But I don't know if it's going to take. I hope it doesn't take. Let's just put it this way. I hope it doesn't take for someone to lose life in their near family or whatever, friends, to wake them up to see that this is not tiddlywinks and manhole covers. It's not a game. The severity of this starts with us here at our southern border, number one, and the invasion that has upon us that is going to come full circle. Believe it. And it's not going to be with tanks and helicopters and planes. It's going to be knives. The chosen weapon of an assassin. And that's what these people are. They're sending their assassins into America because our government has gotten to the point out of control and tyrannical. And the only way to stop it is what they did in 1776, is what they did in Russia, and what they did in Germany. Blood is going to have to be shed at some time or another, because Dan said it early. They will not go away. 109 countries, 1,030 times banned this group of degenerate bastards, murdering bastards. Now, what does it take for people to see it? I can't say it any louder. I can't do any more for my city council, my city. I sold my home. I'm putting my shit in my truck. And if I have to take this show on the tour, on the road, then so be it. But I can't do it anymore. And just like Mike brought up Josh in Minnesota by himself, Wisconsin, here I am in Ohio. We call stuck Ohio, Blowhio, because it's that bad. And these other groups, I've talked to them. They all want to do the thing like the Republic did. They want to go to the courts. They want to go to their courts. They want to try and fix the courts, fix the system. The system's broke at every level. And it's going to stay broken because it stays in Washington, D.C., which isn't even the states of this country of the states of America. I get so pissed off, I want to punch somebody in the throat, and I ain't got nobody to do it to. Come here, dog. Where you at? We're going to wrestle. I yield. I got 160-pound dog.
Go hit that dog.
I ain't going to hit that dog. You know better than that. No, I ain't going to hit that dog. That dog will rip my arms off. I yield, you guys. I don't know what to say. It's so disheartening.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Josh, go ahead, man.
It's a good group to be in, and I just keep fighting the fight. You know, and that's all we can do is keep fighting the fight. I don't want to go in their courtrooms because they're deceptive and they're devious. You know, it's always a 50-50, and it's never in your favor. So I don't know about going to the courts and all that crap. I'm just I want to get a hold of Tave there and see what I can wrestle around with him and fuck him. Let's just start fucking him. That's all I want to do is dick out and start fucking him.
Oh God. No homosexuals. That's it. That's it. Oh my Lord. Man, we'll have to edit that, Dan. We got to get that out of there. Before Dan goes, I just want to say, thanks for everybody that tuned in tonight. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm trying to get Dan, like I said, if you guys don't know, try to be more, because he's gonna be like my co-host, but I want him to pretty much run the platform on Tuesday, and see how that goes. So I'm gonna connect him to Spotify and Twitter next week, and then me and him will probably try where he can see. I don't know if he can see the board or not. I'll call him after the show and see how it went for him. I don't know what he can see. I don't know what's going on. I pretty much had to run the platform again, but he's got stricter rules, so he's going to probably keep everybody to 2 minutes sharp, I guess, or 3 minutes, and that's it. So, but anyway, thanks for everybody that was tuned in tonight. I appreciate it. And I'm going to
Joe, real quick before you go off the air. Hey, Joe, look, I like to say to Tave, I got your email. Somehow it wound up in spam. I'm going to respond to you with some options. Okay?
Perfect. Cause I just went and I went ahead and bought a couple balls and a basketball hoop the other day, so it doesn't matter. Send me the options. We'll play the games.
I'll send you some options. I think you'll find them very interesting.
All right. I know what you guys are talking about. So, all right.
Yeah, we're talking about playing TikTok and YouTube.
Yeah, I know. All right. Anyway, listen. All right, listen. All right. So next Tuesday, 7 p.m., once again, God bless the Republic. Dan, go ahead. Take us out, man.
Yeah, I like to collect books. I've been a book reader my whole life because, why reinvent the wheel? There's many, many people that have spent sometimes decades researching some of these important issues. One of the books that's opened up my eyes a lot in the last 5 years was a book written by Robert Friedman. Now, he's Jewish. And he wrote this book in 2000. And it's kind of interesting because I got a copy of the book because another friend of mine had read it and said, hey, I thought of you when I read it. After reading the book, I can see why. The name of the book is Red Mafia, and it's spelled Mafiyah. He spelled it that way for a reason. Red Mafia, How the Russian Mob Has Invaded America. Now, Robert Friedman says in the book, he used the term Russian mob to describe the Jewish mob out of Russia. So when you see the word Russian mob, remember that's a euphemism for the Jewish mob. Now, why is this book important? Because as the Russian mob invaded America, you can see how their mentality was incorporated into the governing of this nation, because they went from buying politicians and fighting the law enforcement. They went from that type of running organized crime to paying to get people put into office so they no longer had to waste time fighting anything, because the mob ran the police and the mob. Now, it's in his book. He's got the names, he's got the synagogues, he's got the rabbis, he's got the famous people that made it possible, and you're going to recognize a lot of the names that made it possible for this Jewish mob to invade America. And how many years ago did we say, it's almost like the American government at all levels runs like organized crime? It's because it is organized crime. Now, here's the other part. Now, we just talked about everybody has a price to pay if you're going to fight for truth and freedom. Okay? That's true. Robert Friedman was warned by the Russian mob, the Jewish mob, that if he wrote the book, they were going to come after him. And within a few years after writing the book, they finally got him, just like they did Arthur Kessler and his wife after he wrote The 13th Tribe, which tells you where the Khazarians come from. Okay? So they're not the people of the Bible. They're not the Israelites of old. They never have been, never will be. That's why they don't operate like them. That's why there's no biblical signature to these people at all. Okay, so if you can read The Red Mafia by Robert Friedman, it will answer many of your questions and see if you don't come to the same conclusion, that this explains why we're operating under organized crime with a cover that makes it look like we have a republic when it's a total joke. You're living under the Russian Jewish mob right now. So get the book, read it, educate yourself, because that's the only way you win this thing, is you got to be smarter than your enemies.
Right on.
Yep. Yeah, and you're absolutely correct, Dan. People, they will not address the truth. They won't look at the truth. They'll just ignore it. They're taught in their ways, set in their ways. But like you guys were saying, we got to keep fighting, keep standing up. What we're doing what we're doing peacefully, as much as possible, lawfully, and keep doing what the righteous army needs to do to stand up for truth and justice and liberty for all. You know, if not, then we give up. We're in trouble. You know,
hallelujah.
We're in trouble. We give up. All right, thanks, Mike. Take care, everybody. God bless. Take care.
Yeah, man.
That's all you ever hear about in this country is our differences. That's all the media and the politicians are ever talking about, the things that separate us, things that make us different from one another. That's the way the ruling class operates in any society. They try to divide the rest of the people. They keep the lower and the middle classes fighting with each other so that they, the rich, can run off with all the fucking money. Fairly simple thing happens to work. You know anything different, that's what they're going to talk about. Race, religion, ethnic and national background, jobs, income, education, social status, sexuality, anything you can do, keep us fighting with each other so that they can keep going to the bank. You know how I describe the economic and social classes in this country? The upper class keeps all of the money, pays none of the taxes. The middle class pays all of the taxes, does all of the work. The poor are there just to scare the shit out of the middle class. Keep them showing up at those jobs.
They're all the same. I'll show you politics in America. Here it is, right here. I think the puppet on the right shares my beliefs. I think the puppet on the left is more to my liking. Hey, wait a minute. There's one guy holding up both puppets. Shut up. Go back to bed, America. Your government is in control.
I have this feeling, man, because you know there's a handful of people actually run everything. That's true. It's provable. It's not I'm not a conspiracy nut. It's provable. Handful, very small elite run and own these corporations, which include the mainstream media. I have this feeling who's ever elected president, like Clinton was, no matter what your promises you promise on the campaign trail, blah, 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 when you win, you go into this smoky room with the 12 industrialist, capitalist scumfucks who got you in there, and you're in this smoky room, and this little film screen comes down, and a big guy in a cigar rolled a film, and it's a shot of the Kennedy assassination from an angle you've never seen before. It looks suspiciously off the grassy knoll, and then the screen goes up and the lights come up and they go to the new president. Any questions? Just what my agenda is. First we bomb Baghdad. You got it.